sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
All right, so we're back. And you know what that means. Another deep dive. And today we're going to dive straight into the mud, into the muck.
The messy world of politics.
Exactly. Because sometimes these deep dives can get a little messy, right? Today's no exception.
No, not at all. And this was particularly interesting because it kind of gives us a glimpse into the state of things.
Yeah, so we're talking about a House Oversight Committee meeting. This was back on January 14th, 2025.
A big one. Lots of power there. Investigations, holding the government accountable, that kind of thing.
Right, exactly. And in this particular meeting, they were discussing Rep. Jasmine Crockett's amendment to reinstate the Oversight Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Civil Liberties.
Heavy stuff. Important stuff.
Yeah. And, to add even more fuel to the fire, I guess you could say, this meeting took place right after the House passed H.R. 28.
The Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act.
Right. You probably remember this one. It essentially bars transgender women from competing in women's sports.
Huge debate. Lots of strong opinions on both sides.
For sure. For sure. And you could definitely feel that tension, that surrounding transgender rights was just simmering in the room.
Oh, yeah. It was palpable.
And that's when things really started to heat up between Rep. Crockett, a Democrat, and Rep. Nancy Mace, a Republican.
This is where it gets good. Or bad, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah. So I've read through the transcripts, watched the clips, and there's this one moment that just jumps out. Rep. Crockett seemingly accuses Rep. Mace of using this whole trans issue to boost her campaign fundraising.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And Crockett actually says, and I'm quoting directly here, somebody's campaign coffers really are struggling right now, so she's going to keep saying trans, trans, trans so that people will feel threatened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty direct hit.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes you think about, the motivations behind, political rhetoric. Was Crockett truly concerned about the impact on trans individuals? Or was this a way to kind of paint Mace as opportunistic, someone just trying to score political points?
Right. And of course, Mace doesn't just take this lying down.
Oh, I bet she didn't.
No. And her response is what really, I think, sent this whole thing viral. It's when those personal attacks start flying. And that's where it gets interesting and maybe a little concerning.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more.
So Mace interrupts Crockett and says, I am no child. Do not call me a child. I am no child. Don't even start. Now, there is an age difference between them. Crockett's 43 and Mace is 47.
Not exactly a huge gap.
No, not really. So what do you make of that reaction? Was she genuinely offended, or was there something else going on there?
Well, it's always tough to say what's really going on in someone's head.
Right.
But you got to remember, politicians are in the business of politics. So even their seemingly off-the-cuff remarks, they're often calculated. To some degree, anyway.
So you're saying even her anger could be a strategy?
It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
By playing the victim, she might be trying to get certain people on her side,
Right. And then it gets even hotter. Mace goes on to say, I am a grown woman. I have broken more glass ceilings than you ever have. And then comes the line that really, I think, set the internet on fire. She says, you will not do that. I am not a child. I am not a child. If you want to take it outside, we can do that. Take it outside.
Whoa. Take it outside. That's not exactly the kind of language you expect to hear in Congress.
Right. And it immediately raises the question, was she actually threatening her with physical violence?
Well, Rep. Maxwell Frost, a Democrat, certainly thought so. He immediately made a motion to strike those words from the record.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big deal, right? Striking someone's remarks from the record, it's like a formal condemnation. Like you're saying, this is not how we behave here.
Exactly.
But that didn't happen, did it?
No.
Chairman of the committee, Rep. James Comer, Republican, he denied the request, said Mace wasn't actually challenging Crockett to a fight.
But the fact that it even came up, that there was a motion to strike her words, it tells you something, right? It obviously rubs some people the wrong way.
Yeah, it definitely crossed a line for some folks in the room.
For sure.
And the fallout didn't end there. The whole thing spilled out onto social media, with both representatives taking to their X accounts to kind of continue the argument. And the language they use, well, let's just say it gets even more colorful.
This is where it gets really messy. Social media, it can be like gasoline on a fire.
Yeah, totally.
Totally.
So Crockett doubles down. She calls Mace an attention-seeking loser. Even implies that the only thing Mace would hit was her fundraising goals. And Mace, of course, fires back with a tweet storm of her own. writes, "I'm no child, and if I wanted a physical fight, you'd know it. That's not what this was. I won't be bullied by someone who wants to take away women's rights while lecturing about civil rights. I won't be bullied by someone who thinks being scared of rape is a fantasy. This ain't political, it's personal."
So she's bringing up women's rights, even invoking rape. Wow, this escalated quickly.
It did. So the question is, was this whole back and forth a genuine outburst? Or was it all, carefully calculated political theater?
That's the big question, isn't it? And
Yeah.
trying to understand what was going on behind the scenes, that can help us understand not just this one incident, but what's happening in politics as a whole.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how fast it went from, talking policy to this very public, very personal feud. So let's dig into this a bit. What might be behind all this? Okay, so let's go back to that first jab from Crockett about Mace's campaign coffers. What are some ways to read that comment? Was she just trying to, I don't know, get under her skin? Or was there maybe like a strategy there?
Well, you got to remember what was going on, right? This wasn't, just another day in Congress. The Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, which Crockett was against, remember, it had just passed. So everyone's already on edge.
Right. So Crockett might have been, genuinely frustrated seeing Mace, in her view, using this sensitive issue to gain something politically.
Exactly. To Crockett, it might have seemed like Mace was, I don't know, being cynical, trying to drum up fear and appeal to a certain group of voters. It happens a lot, sadly.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe she was calling out what she saw as hypocrisy or just, insincerity. But some people might say that that child comment was a bit much, kind of below the belt, and that it just made things worse.
Yeah, I can see that. And it's a good example of, how quickly things can go off the rails when you start getting personal. Hard to have a real discussion, find common ground, when everyone's just trying to defend themselves.
And Mace, well, she definitely went on the defensive. Her response, man, it was intense, especially that "take it outside" comment. Do you think that was real anger, or was she maybe, I don't know, playing into this idea that she's being attacked?
It's tough to know what's truly going on in someone's mind, but it's worth thinking about the fact that, playing the victim can be a powerful tool. It can rally people who feel like they're also under attack. From the left or the elites or whatever.
So even if she wasn't, intentionally trying to manipulate things, that reaction might have still helped her politically.
Exactly. And that's something to keep in mind when we're trying to figure these things out. Politicians, they're always thinking about how things look. So even when it seems like they're just reacting, in the moment, there might be more to it.
Right. And then boom, it's all over social media. And things they get even more intense, even less nuanced. Crockett doubles down, calls Mace an attention-seeking loser. Mace then brings up Crockett's views on women's rights, even brings up rape. It's like a free fall into mudslinging.
It is. And it makes you wonder about, the role of social media in all of this. Can we even have thoughtful, complex discussions online anymore?
It's so fast, You say something, and it's instantly everywhere. People jump to conclusions, take sides. It's hard to, just step back and think when everyone's so fired up.
And it's not just social media, right? It's the news, too. 24-hour news cycle, the pressure to get clicks and views. It all pushes toward sensationalism, conflict. Nuance doesn't get you ratings.
So how do we even begin to, talk about important things when everyone's so quick to judge, to demonize the other side? Is it even possible to disagree anymore without, all hell breaking loose?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer is, well, it's complicated. Our system itself, with its two parties and winner-take-all elections, it kind of encourages this division,
So it's like built into the system.
In a way, yeah. But that doesn't mean we can't disagree. It just means it takes work. From our leaders and from us, too.
Okay, so what can we do, as individuals to maybe have better conversations to try to bridge these gaps that just seem to be getting wider?
I think it starts with recognizing that disagreement. It's not a bad thing in itself. It can be really valuable, if we do it right. Different viewpoints, they make us question things. They can lead to better solutions.
So you're saying, embrace the debate, but be respectful. Don't just shut down anyone who doesn't agree with you.
Exactly. We got to be willing to listen to those other viewpoints, even if they, make us uncomfortable, or even if we think they're wrong, and try to understand where they're coming from, even if we don't agree.
Easier said than done, right? Especially these days when we're all just bombarded with information all the time, and it's all just confirming what we already think.
For sure. That's where, that emotional intelligence comes in. We got to be aware of our own biases, and learn to handle our emotions.
So, like, take a breath before we hit send on that angry tweet.
Exactly. And remember that the point of a political conversation, it shouldn't be to, win or to destroy the other person. It should be to find some common ground, to work towards something that helps everyone.
Building bridges, not walls. It sounds so simple, but man, it can be really hard. Especially when it feels like the other side isn't, playing fair.
It is hard, but it's also incredibly important if we want a system that works, one where we can actually tackle these huge problems without just yelling at each other.
It's funny when you zoom out and look at this whole thing, it really does feel like a mini version of what's happening everywhere in politics. All this outrage, all this anger at each other. It's everywhere you look these days.
Yeah, it's a trend we've been seeing for a while now, and it's worrying because when we just resort to these attacks, it's like, how can we actually talk about the things that matter?
Right. And it just creates this feeling of like distrust everywhere, right? Everyone's suspicious of each other, always looking for some hidden motive. It's hard to find any common ground when you're always looking for the trick,
Totally. And then it becomes this vicious cycle,
Yeah.
Each side thinks they're justified in going further and further because they think the other side's already playing dirty.
Yeah.
So you get these more and more extreme positions, and any attempt to meet in the middle just gets seen as weakness.
It's like everyone's in their own little bubble, right? Just hearing the same things over and over, and anyone who disagrees is the enemy. It's exhausting.
It is, and it's dangerous because it means we can't solve problems together. If we can't even agree on basic facts, if we can't even talk to each other without it turning into a fight, then how do we deal with these big issues we're facing?
So what do we do? How do we break out of this? Is it even possible?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a tough one. But I think, honestly, it starts with each of us. Looking at ourselves and asking, am I making this better or worse? Am I arguing in good faith? Or am I just trying to, score points, make the other side look bad?
And I think it's also important to remember that, politicians, the media, they're responding to what they think we want. So if we want things to change, we gotta start demanding something different.
Absolutely. We need to reward civility, reward thoughtful debate.
Mm-hmm.
And reject this kind of this toxic rhetoric that's just everywhere these days. Hold our leaders to a higher standard.
It's like you said before, disagreeing, it's not a bad thing. It's necessary, right, for a democracy to work. But it's got to be done respectfully with a real attempt to understand the other person's point of view.
Exactly. We got to get away from this idea that politics is just a fight to the death, where one side wins and the other loses. We got to start seeing it as something we do together, where we can find solutions that actually work for everybody.
Yeah, it's a tall order, I know, but it's worth aiming for. Because the other option, a society where we're all just angry at each other all the time, that's not a good place to be.
So next time you find yourself, in the middle of some heated political debate, take a second, take a breath, and ask yourself, am I part of the problem here? Or am I part of the solution? Am I really listening? Or am I just, waiting to say my piece?
And remember, we can disagree without tearing each other apart. It's not always easy, but it's crucial. So let's all try to do better, to have these tough conversations in a way that actually moves us forward.
Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and what we do now, it really matters for us and for the future.
And on that note, that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay curious.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.